Welcome back to the show. Today I am chatting with Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, SBK, author of the new book, Rise Above. Overcome a victim mindset, empower yourself, and rise to your full potential. We get into some really powerful stuff about mindset and personal growth, but what really surprised me is how funny SBK is. We had a great time in this chat. I hope you enjoy this conversation as well. And if you do, please subscribe and share it with a friend. Dr. Kaufman, welcome to the show.
I'm so glad to finally be on your show. I've seen it for a while.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Where do we find you this morning?
Oh, I'm in New York City.
And I'm out here on the West Coast. And
the best coast. No, it's not the best coast. I actually just moved from LA. So I have to change my mentality now. Now I'm on the best coast. Yeah.
Okay. There are many parts of the book Rise Above that I want to get into today. I really connected with the book on a personal level, but even more so, I feel like this is the book the American culture needs right now, addressing this pervasive victim mindset. And I thought a nice jumping off point would be the first sentence in the book. You had a quote from Joan Rivers. "Listen, I wish I could tell you it gets better, but it doesn't get better. You get better."
You should have said it in a Joan Rivers voice.
Do you have a good Joan Rivers impersonation?
I wish I could say it gets better. Yeah. It doesn't get better. You get better. That's my best Joan Rivers.
I like it. Why was that quote inspirational to you or encapsulate what was coming in the book?
Well, it's so much, and many other people have said it in lots of different ways, famous philosophers, famous psychologists, thinkers. Not that Joan Rivers is not any of those things, but but just the general idea that we can blame all the world for our problems, and it's everyone else's fault. And then, things don't change and we lose all sense of empowerment over that. Or we can really look within at all the ways that we can show up in this world regardless of the world being on fire, and the things we can tap into within ourselves, like the deep levels of resiliency that we all have. We don't even know we have until we actually try, until we actually get tested, and we actually realize that we can overcome things. It's really resonant with me. That quote, it's really resonant.
So what is this victim mindset and why is it a problem?
Well, when you have a victim mindset, you tend to blame all your problems on external circumstances, whether it's that life dealt you a bad hand or that a person or even an entire group of people have it in for you and are holding you back. You believe you don't need to take responsibility for your actions or reactions because of past trauma, and you can't stop ruminating about your past victimization. You fixate so much on how to enact revenge that you rarely think about solutions or ways of moving forward with your life with hope and purpose. At the end of the day, I want all people to realize that they're allowed to have a future, even if their past sucked. Like we forget that sometimes. We get it caught up in our ruts and we get caught up in our loops, as they say on Westworld.
Yes.
You remember that, Nick? You remember that?
I do.
We all get caught up in our loops. Yeah.
In our loops. Yeah. I feel like in the book, there is a little bit of a old school mentality that points back towards agency and personal responsibility. And I don't mean to take this in any sort of political direction, because I feel like in the old days, left and right espoused the ideals of personal responsibility.
But now they both suck.
Yes. Agreed. Now they're both mired in victimhood.
Yeah.
And
they're fighting each other over who's the biggest victim. It's like the victimhood Olympics over here in American politics.
Yes. And social media reflects that as well on a personal level.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
How do you see the role of social media in this victim mindset that is permeating throughout society.
I think it rewards it, it incentivizes it. I had this conversation recently with Jonathan Haidt on my podcast. He is like the anti-social media guy. That's his thing. No.
Right.
Yeah, he wrote
author
the book,
of The Anxious Generation.
That's right. Have you had him on your podcast yet?
I have not. I would love to talk to him.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to make an intro.
That would be fantastic.
But yeah, we recently had a conversation about how his work intersects with my work, and we concluded there's a big intersection. The social media landscape now is one that really gets right. You rise right to the top of the algorithms if your identity is a victimhood identity. It's you don't rise. You don't get the most attention if you're talking about how happy you are today. If you're just like, hey, everyone, I just want to let everyone know that I'm feeling really good today. I really have a gratitude for God, for life. It's like, no, that ain't getting attention.
Right. I can attest to that. And what's interesting about the algorithm, I mean, I have seen certain accounts get traction with talking about whatever is holding them back and what they've been a victim of. And when they try to switch gears, they're captured by the audience, I guess, partially, and really by the algorithm, because they suddenly the account doesn't reach more people when they talk about overcoming that thing. And as soon as they go back to, I'm stuck here and this is why I'm stuck and this is why everything's bad, it's like boom, 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 the follower count keeps going up. It's
very seductive. I mean, there's something deep in human nature that I don't blame them. I feel the seductive siren of wow, I could probably take my follower count to the next level if I complained more. But it's like, or if I created more controversies, or I found, some group to make, I've decided is I'm the savior of my own in-group, against whatever insert X out group. That's what gets you the followers. And I get that and I understand that. And there is sometimes I hear that siren call to go on, I'm bored. Let's say I'm bored. I'm having a boring day. I'm like, let's rile things up a little bit if I go on. But I tend to suppress those urges because it's going to sound really corny, but I have higher values. I mean, and I don't mean that in like a moral superior sort of way. I don't think I'm morally superior to others, but I think it's just in a way that maybe some people, maybe I am morally superior to some people. I will admit that. There's some people I'm like, oh my God, I don't think this person has any moral compass at all. But
if you want to name some names, I think the algorithm would love that. No, I'm kidding. God. I'm kidding, of course.
No. Well, I have no filter, so I have no problem with that. But I just can't think of it. Put on the spot, I suddenly can't think of anyone other than Trump. But anyway, oh my God, did I just go there?
There it goes. The can of worms is open.
God. Oh my God. But Biden. Okay, fair enough. He was out in left field as well, not knowing what day it was. But look, here's the thing. Okay, folks. Here's the thing. We all have higher values. We all do. And we don't we're not tapping into like the future we really want to live in or the agency we really want to have when we feel that siren call to get attention and to get rewards and to get, there's something so deeply tribal within all of us that any opportunity we can get to be more tribal is very alluring. It's so deep seated into our DNA,
Right.
You think about, let me just think right now, if we had social media back in the Savannah Desert when there were small bands, it'd be even much, 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 much worse. Because reputation, you could die if you didn't have the back of your clan.
It kept us alive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Your tribe really mattered when, you got like fucking lions, coming into your tent being like, what's up? Like, oh, why is there a lion in my tent right now? I need help.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's so deeply seated into our DNA, but we still have those minds in, we think we're so evolved.
Yeah. There's a lot of monkey stuff left over.
I love the way you said that. We're still apes, aren't we? Am I allowed to say that? Humans are apes. I think that's technically true.
You mentioned, I think it was on Sam Harris, if I'm not mistaken, but this talking about college essays and the victim mindset that pervades college essays. And I thought this was an interesting anecdote that you might find fascinating. I own a business that does college consulting and test preparation and anything related to college. And I recently saw this young lady. I thought it encapsulated a trend I have been seeing in California in particular. And I love California, born and bred here. I love this state. Let me start with that. But this young lady, she wrote this great essay. She's young, inserted herself into a world that was dominated by grown men in a sporting sense. She was a referee in this sense, and found herself as a senior in high school being yelled at and cursed at by grown men in a very competitive situation. And she really shrunk from the situation, and then thought about it and said, that's not who I want to be. And then rose to the occasion and said, hey, I belong here. I can do this. They didn't put me in this arena accidentally. And then really overcame that and succeeded and ended up refereeing some Olympic trials. I mean, I just thought it was this wonderful essay. And I noticed in different pockets of the country, especially in Texas, she got in just about everywhere she applied. Wow. And in California, she was denied all over the place. And it strikes me as being evidence of this trend I've seen in a lot of colleges in California. I feel like especially the UCs right now, like they want to be the savior to students who have had a lot of obstacles. Whereas there are other schools that will really reward, hey, we want you to save yourself. And those are the kids we want. And I feel like one message is a little more empowering than the other, or these decisions are more empowering than the other. And I just wanted to get your 2 cents on that, since you're involved in higher education as well.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm very interested in education. I wrote a book called Ungifted. I think we could have a whole chat about, that whole book was about how we need to change the education system and how we measure intelligence and the role of standardized tests. And that's in my past life. That was my obsession, was that topic. So, so we could probably go on and on about that. I lived in California for 5 years. Couldn't get a professor job anywhere. And it's interesting. In a lot of the interviews and applications, it was like, okay, how are you going to teach Latino students or Latinx student? That was the focus, was like, because there's such a growing population, right, of Latino students in California. So it's reasonable to ask, how are you going to, are you going to learn Spanish? it's like I have to be the one. They don't have to learn English, but I have to be the one to learn Spanish.
Right.
But okay, that's fine. You can argue the merits. You can argue the benefits and disadvantages of that. But I have noticed that when you're applying for colleges in a lot of universities, back in the day, in my day, it was that you overcame the challenges. That was the thing that got you into the college. But now it's not how you've overcome. It's who is suffering the most, who is the biggest victimhood identity. And we have to make sure that we get those people in, because we'll look really good as a university, because we look like saviors as a university. Look at us, let's virtue signal that we got this person who had this trauma. And then we, now our university, pretty soon universities are going to brag. They're like, Harvard, here, it used to be Harvard's SAT scores they used to brag about. Now it'll be like, here at Harvard, we have 75% of students who are traumatized by life.
Yes.
That's a great thing. Isn't this amazing? We have more students who have trauma than your students have trauma, and it's I
love your Harvard voice, by the way.
Oh, really?
We at Harvard.
I turned down Harvard, by the way. I just want to say that.
Fantastic.
I chose Yale. I didn't really feel like I fit in anyway there either. But something has really shifted in what we reward, but I think it becomes like a competition. Like once, universities decide, like just in the culture decides that this is the thing that we should be in rewarding and incentivizing, it becomes, all the colleges now have to start competing against this. And they leave, like, this person you just mentioned sounds very capable and awesome, quite frankly. Yeah,
Absolutely. And yeah, I would like her to have some opportunities in every state she wants to live in, especially if it's this one I happen to be in. I want capable people excited to be here. And you mentioned Ungifted, and I know we're here to talk about Rise Above.
Did you read Ungifted? Do you have a
Oh
copy?
yeah, that was the book that turned me on to your work.
Amazing.
Yeah, someone said, "Hey, you're working with kids on these standardized tests. Here's the book to show you everything that's." I mean, not
Great.
that I needed convincing. I knew there were all kinds of problems with standardized tests, but I loved the book, and I think for anybody that hasn't read it, if you would share that story of your path from where you started in school to where you ended up. You ended up at Yale, but where you started, I think it's very insightful into your viewpoint on the world, and has a lot of the roots on the importance of taking on this empowerment mindset in your latest book.
Yeah, there are a lot of threads. So the new book really does have its origin story. I was in special ed for up until 9th grade in high school for an auditory learning disability, central auditory processing disability. By the way, I found out my brother, David Blaine, has auditory processing disability as well. The magician, David Blaine. And I was like,
kidding.
That's so cool. Yeah, maybe. I wonder, I'm really into magic right now as well. So I feel like I wonder if there's some connection there between disabled people and their interest in magic. But anyway, I heard him mention that recently on Doc Shepard's podcast. What's that podcast called? The
Armchair Expert.
Yeah, that's right, Armchair Expert. Yeah. So I had this disability, and a lot of people thought I was really stupid. I was bullied a lot, and I internally felt like I was intelligent. Like I was like, my own inner experience wasn't as disabled, even though everyone else on the outside was treating me like that. In 9th grade, a special ed teacher who I had never seen before, she took me aside and she said, what are you still doing here? She saw something in me that I don't think other people saw. Well, they certainly didn't see. And she was just covering for the main teacher. Isn't that crazy? Just one day, she saw me with fresh eyes. It's amazing. All these other people just didn't have fresh eyes to see me. And I was like, yeah, what am I doing here? And it really inspired me in my own head to like take myself out, because I realized in that moment no one's coming to save me. I mean, she didn't say you should get out of special ed, but she was just like, she was like questioning, like, what's your disability? Why are you here? And in my own head, it really inspired me to like say, you know what, like, let me get out of this thing. And they had to set up a whole meeting with the school psychologist and the administrator. It was a whole real big deal, where the student himself is like, I'm breaking out, and that never heard of such a situation before in the school district, maybe in the history of the world. The special ed kid, it's usually the parent that can get them out, but usually the kid themselves isn't like, you know what, I'm done with special ed.
Yeah.
You don't see that often, and I don't know why not. By the way, I don't know why kids, they have so much learned helplessness. That's another question, another issue. I see it so much amongst my own students at Columbia. There's this word helplessness. Oh, I can't. I have so many classes. I can't handle this essay this week. It's like, no, I think you can handle it. I think you can. Yeah. Anyway, so I never wanted that. And there was something within me, a deep fire that set off this passion to just discover what I was capable of in life, and to see if I could learn, if I could take regular classes. And realized I really loved learning. It was the best thing for me to take myself out. I realized I had potentials I never realized I knew. I was in the choir. I was singing, singing choir shit. Decrius Reek, all that bullshit. And then I also did. And then I did West Side Story. I did West Side Story, and I quit West Side Story because the dancing was way too crazy.
Okay.
I was a jet, and that dancing was nuts. But I became a Latin scholar. That was something. And then I played cello. Yeah. So I ended up winning the All Music Department Award, which was amazing. It was amazing. I was in Porgy and Bess. I literally went up and started singing, and then I sat down and continued playing cello. It was like, wow, like I have multiple talents I never knew I had. I think everyone has multiple talents they don't know they had. They have.
And all of this was lying latent when you're in the special education classes.
Oh, 100%. I had no idea what was within me. I had no idea. All I knew, I did go underground. I became a good computer hacker when I was 13 in special ed. That was the only thing that gave me a sense of efficacy. And
just to bring it full circle, I mean,
Yeah.
you are a professor at an Ivy League college. You've gone on to
Isn't
get a
that crazy?
PhD. I mean, just to
Crazy.
really
Crazy.
put a fine point on how much we are, all of us, able to overcome the obstacles in front of us, and just realizing that we can is a powerful step. And one thing I really like about the book is that it's chock full of little mindset reframes, and they're framed different ways, or little exercises to just help people get over that initial hurdle of kind of an either or mindset to a yes and mindset.
That's exactly that. You nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah, it's much more empowering to yes and your life. Yeah.
You talked about neuroticism and that having almost like a dual-edged sword, right? There's some good qualities associated with neuroticism, and then some bad qualities, and taking some steps to go, well, this is who I am, but I want to de-emphasize the negative parts of it and retain the upside.
Yeah, but I should elaborate a little more on what a yes and mindset is.
Okay.
For people in improv, it's you take whatever has happened to you, whatever the other person says, like Nick's like, oh, I love apples, and then the person's like, yes, and you put some whipped cream on the apple and it's even better. I don't know, whatever it is. And so you take whatever it has been given to you and you add to it, enhance it. You keep the thing going. You keep the flow of it going.
Right. You never disagree.
You never.
If you said you have an apple, I don't just turn around and say, no, it's a cupcake.
No. Yeah. I mean, it shuts it down. It's not advancing anything. And so in just like life, you can be like, yes, this terrible, horrible thing happened to me. We should have, I feel like I need to say this right off the bat with like every interview. A victim mindset is what my book's about. You can have been victimized legitimately, of course, and not have a victim mindset, or have a victim mindset. You could not have been victimized and have a victim mindset, and we're seeing a lot of that, in politics right now, like the slightest thing, it's like, like, how dare you? I am a victim of this situation. Yes, and says, yes, a terrible thing happened to you. And given it happened, what can you do to improv that? Well, and I got this, and I can move forward with my life. And, there's more to me than what happened to me. So you yes and it. And I think it's something so empowering about that. So I wanted to really mention that. I've been really trying to stay away from the phrase double click on that, because I used that phrase in my Sam Harris interview, and there are literally threads about this, about how annoying it is when I say it. Let's double click on this. So I almost said it, but I didn't.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Kaufman, never read the comments. You just gotta let that be its own thing.
Yeah, Bill Maher once said, like, I definitely don't read the comments because I'm not a masochist.
Right. Well, and to be clear, like, the book does not downplay severe trauma whatsoever. It's not denying that bad things happen to people at all. No, it's just more concerned with, what do we do next? What do we do now? Whether that has happened or not.
Given this is what has happened, or even given this is the way you are, and I will segue into your other question from that. For most of my life, I've been neurotic as fuck. Like, let's be honest. Like, I have a neurotic Jewish mother who's like off the charts, telling me I should be worrying about everything, like even things I never even thought about, she's like, you should worry about that. It's like, I wasn't worried about it, but okay. Like, now I'm worried about everything. Thanks, Mom. I think that, recognizing that has been a strong part of my personality structure, and being honest with myself. I've come a long way, honestly, in the past 7-8 years. I don't think I'm that neurotic anymore, actually. Interestingly enough, just speaking about the power of personality change and how we really can change our personality. I mean, I might have, I was one of the most neurotic people on this planet, and I think right now I'm pretty chill. Now, marijuana does help, I should say.
Yes.
In lowering your neuroticism levels. Don't do drugs, kids. But I don't. I know all people listening from your test prep company are like, cut this interview.
That's right.
cut.
The board right now is just like, whoa. We got to edit that.
Yeah, and feel free to edit out.
It's legal now. I think it's
I'm raw and uncensored SBK. But
yes.
feel free on your end to cancel me, but or censor me. Lowering your neuroticism is very possible, as long as you're not a victim to it. As long as you don't identify with the worst parts of yourselves and actually take. A lot of neurotic people have a very high sensitivity, and harnessing that sensitivity for creativity, for connection, for love, deep love, is all very possible. It's very possible. You don't have to view yourself as a victim of it. There are a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I'm such a highly sensitive person. I'm such a highly sensitive person." I'm going to do Cartman. I'm a highly sensitive person. Highly sensitive person. I can't, don't like tiptoe around me. Whatever I do, and people know, they tiptoe around certain people, and they know that they're very so fragile, they're so sensitive. You don't have any real conversations, and I don't ever want to be like that. I want people to feel empowered to have real conversations with me, to disagree with me. I don't want anyone to feel like they're walking on eggshells around me because I'm a highly sensitive person. I don't want that. And so going back to my personal story, it always boggles my mind, people that seem to want, the crutches. And I don't get that. I don't get that mentality. Why do you want the crutches?
So a moment that really struck me on a personal level is when you discussed the highly sensitive person, because as a kid, I mean, especially elementary school, I definitely, if that phrase had existed back then, would have been labeled a highly sensitive person. And I remember somewhere around middle school deciding that I didn't want to be, one, I wanted to understand it, and two, I didn't want to be held back by it anymore. And you tell me if this tracks for you, but I've come to think of being sensitive. I mean, usually when we use it in the popular vernacular, it just is code for, having big feelings and getting your feelings hurt. And yet I think what being sensitive actually is much more along the lines of there's a book called Quiet. I forget the author's name, but
Susan Cain. She's one of my best friends.
Yes. There we go. And she defined it as being much more like a sensitive instrument and being sensitive to the emotional landscape outside of yourself and inside yourself. And it's just, it's almost like how a Geiger counter can measure radiation. If there's too much stimuli, the instrument is overloaded, and then you are experiencing those big feelings. But that's more of a symptom of what's going on rather than the root cause of what it means to be sensitive. And like you said, that sensitive person can also be highly attuned to beauty and what is interesting in the world and connecting with people. And I think someone who is sensitive makes for the best listener you can ever find, because one of the highest compliments ever paid to me was a young lady. She said, I like talking to you because you hear the things I say, but you also are somehow hearing the things that I didn't say.
Women love that. Women love that. Women love when you can read their mind. But sorry, that's a whole topic.
I wanted to get your 2 cents just on that definition around highly sensitive person, and if that tracks for you.
It does. 100% it tracks. And I, being able to take a step back and being able to reflect and see nuances and things super conducive to intellectualism as well as obviously creativity. I think that unfortunately, a lot of males get bullied. Highly sensitive males get bullied when they're younger. There's a sort of social stigma against being a highly sensitive male, and I really want to break that down. I really want to get rid of that. There's no dichotomy between being sensitive and strong. Do you know Chris Williamson, the bro podcaster?
Yes.
Maybe he wouldn't describe himself as the bro podcaster, but he's very buff and masculine looking. And I was just on his podcast yesterday, and I asked him.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy. And I was like, Chris,
and I feel like he's unfairly labeled as the bro podcaster.
100%. And I was like, because I know him. I've hung out with him, personally. And I was like, wouldn't you say yourself a highly sensitive person? He's like, absolutely. I am definitely a highly sensitive person. And I was like, we need more people like you to, men who lift weights to say that it's okay being a highly sensitive person. So I think that we really need to break down that. That's a big stigma I want to break down.
And to speak to Chris Williamson, I mean, I think he's a great example because he is an excellent conversationalist and interviewer, and a lot of that just comes back to qualities that we would label as a highly sensitive person, because he's picking up on those little nuances when he's talking to someone.
It's true.
I really liked your story about the girl Eddie, I think was her name, and if I copied and pasted it. If you don't remember the story,
I remember exactly. The story.
But if you want to share the story real quick,
I remember the story.
Okay,
even you saying the name Eddie brings back feelings. Within me. How many years later? 39 years later.
Yeah.
Still brings back feelings. Well, it's mortifying, when you're a young kid and you feel like you're in love with someone, and but I never talked to her, and I waited till the last day of camp, and then just blurted out, "I love you, Eddie," and all her friends, really laughed at me, and that was mortifying and humiliating. But I think that the answer to that is not to end up hating women, not
to become an incel. Yeah.
No. Incels are such a great example of a victim mindset, by the way. And yes. I had a much longer section of that chapter, and they're like, Scott, you don't want to write a whole, it's like turning into a whole book about incels. So I had to seriously condense that section, but I felt like they were such a great example of a lot of the principles and cognitive distortions I'm talking about in the book. We all have experiences where we're rejected by things, where we're, you can't expect life, you can't expect everyone to like you. You can't expect, also you got to take responsibility for things, it was absurd, to think that someone would respond favorably to "I love you" when you've never even talked to them before. I mean, it's right. When you're a 10-year-old kid, maybe that's a reasonable assumption, but not when you become a damn adult. Yeah.
When I was reading your book and that story about Eddie, I mean, I identify with that. I had moments like that when I was young as well. Oh yeah, no doubt. But actively worked again to go, okay, how do I minimize the downsides of being highly sensitive and maximize the upsides? And while I'm reading your book, I mean, it sparks a memory that it's something I hadn't thought about in a long time. But I remember the exact moment when I was like, I've really come a long ways. And it was in a moment of rejection, which is kind of the point of the story. So it was senior year, and there was a young lady who was also a senior. We're about to graduate. I'm going to call her high school. Yeah. I'm going to call her Allison, as a code name. And it was one of those situations where Allison had always been very pretty and kind and smart and kind of had it all going on. But all of a sudden it was like the braces came off and she matured, and suddenly she's a knockout and didn't quite know it yet. And I managed to, with a nice yearbook thing that I wrote, where I just said, hey, we've been in theater class together, and I've secretly had a crush on you for the last month. let's go hang out sometime, and left my phone number. And she calls me the next day, says yes. We graduate and we go out one night. Goes just incredibly well, right? We go out to dinner, go to a party. We end up making out in somebody's empty bedroom. And then she has to leave for a month. And I'm like, I've got the day she's coming back like circled on the calendar. It went from crush to full on infatuation. I'm really excited. And she comes back, and a mutual friend of ours, the one who initially introduced us, he is playing in this huge state level soccer game. And I said, hey, why don't we go to the game? And there's another party that night. We'll go to the party afterwards and go see where the night takes us. And she says yes. But then I get a call from the mutual friend a few hours later, and he's like, hey, I did talk to Allison. And he's like, she was gone for a month traveling with her parents and doing that internship. Like, she met this guy that's going to be going to the same college as her. Like, she's really excited about that. She doesn't want you to get the wrong idea and doesn't want to, get your hopes up. And is now like, maybe she's having mixed feelings about this. And my heart just sunk, right? I mean, it was just like, oh, this is brutal. I was so pumped about this situation, but took a moment and thought, okay, you know what? Because I found the key to overcoming the highly sensitive thing was going, it's not about me. Like, it is, do not be overly involved in yourself. And I thought, what's actually, if I can just calm down for a second, what's going on with her right now? Yeah, she met some guy and they're going to the same school. And what am I getting so excited about? She's leaving for NYU in a few weeks anyways. I'm staying in California, and that's okay. She didn't have any obligation to me, and she met some nice guy. And she probably just doesn't want to feel like an asshole telling me that to my face. So I go ahead and I go to pick her up. And I said, and I'm tuned into where she's at. And I had an idea of what I would say to her. She gets in the car. Before we leave, I took her hand and I said, hey, I heard what you said to our mutual friend. And he told me how you're just so excited, like, to be with me and want to be my girlfriend now. And I just want to let you know I feel the same way. And she's sitting there like with her mouth open. And then I just laughed out loud and she laughed. And I was just like, it's okay. He told me everything you said. Like, there's no hard feelings whatsoever. And we still went to the game. We had a great time.
Wow.
And there was no need to make it awkward or bad in any way. And I remember that whole moment where it was coming. I was like, man, I've really come a long ways in that this stuff doesn't have to matter.
I appreciate it. You're a bit of a heartthrob in high school, huh? Your story was obviously different than my story. You did make out with this one girl. So this is what I'm extracting from this story. But
in my mindset, I was always struggling with those situations. I was so afraid somebody might reject me. I'd reject them first or run away from the situation. I was sabotaging myself.
Well, a lot of guys do that. They become Mr. Cool, Mr. Cool, the no more Mr. Nice Guy, like they'll may experience the kind of situation you experience, then put on the leather jacket and be like, no more Mr. Nice Guy, it's a very common defense mechanism for a male in this situation,
and not a useful one at all.
Not a useful one. I do understand the point of your story. I was just thinking like, yeah, Nick, like, I mean, you still were successful in many ways throughout that story. Is that even rejection?
It could have been. I could have taken it hard. I could have just been like, oh, I've been rejected. I'm walking away from the situation to save myself from the embarrassment. And by embracing going, this doesn't have to be embarrassing. This can just be something we laugh about. Everything's okay. Everything's even better because of the rejection.
Yeah. Well, you embraced an empowerment mindset, and you did the right thing. There's just simply the right thing to do in certain situations. I feel like it's not even up for debate. You did the constructive, the most constructive thing you could have done, and you did that. Because you also never know. Here's the thing. She could have been feeling pressured and have made up the story about meeting someone from NYU. And maybe you could have been in a situation where once you lessened that pressure on her, she may have been all over you, So, I mean, I've encountered situations like that, quite frankly, where it's like, my over interest in someone, maybe like they're like feeling a little too much pressure, so then they, they don't want to hurt my feelings, so they'll make something up like, I just don't think I'm ready to date anymore, or whatever, and bullshit. Right. And you're like, but I 100% relieve any pressure, because like I'm not, that's, it's like that's the right thing to do, and they become interested in me again. Right. You never know. It doesn't mean game over just because, and you had this momentary setback.
It doesn't have to be, as the kids say these days, traumatizing.
No.
And that was something I did want to ask you about. Like, if we bled that word of all meaning whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of if it has any meaning anymore. Yeah, because so many different situations are considered a case of trauma now.
And it used to mean something deeply bad, right? I mean, that left a lasting negative mark on the psyche. And it's almost like it started out, I'm sure someone joked about how a homework assignment was traumatizing. But now it's used to describe literal situations where people think they are traumatized by a homework assignment or traumatized by a passing comment. And what word, where does that leave someone when they actually experience real deep trauma? I mean, of course there are levels to it, but there has to be a minimum level, I feel like, to qualify for that word. And we kind of lost that. No,
you're absolutely right. It has a clinical meaning. I mean, I think TikTok therapy is a thing now where the kids are adopting therapy language to describe every situation. Like everyone that you don't like now is a narcissistic psychopath, sociopath. And just because you don't like them, they're a narcissistic sociopath. And everyone's really become really good at diagnosing everyone else, amateur diagnoses. Yeah. And everyone to be able to take any of your pain, anxiety, whatever, and you're trying to me, it's victim mindset. You're trying to find something to blame, and so you blame it on trauma, this nebulous term that could mean anything, but it relieves you of any responsibility at all. It's like, it was trauma. I was an asshole in this situation. I know I was an asshole, but you don't know what my childhood was like. You hear that all the time.
Right.
I don't know if even the worst childhood imaginable justifies being an asshole.
You mentioned narcissism there, and I thought there's a really interesting term in the book, the vulnerable narcissist, which I had not ever heard before. Did you coin that term?
Yeah, it's funny. I did not coin that term, but I've done a lot of research on it and wrote a big paper in a clinical psychology journal arguing that we need to view it as a source of personality variation, not as either you have it or you don't, either we diagnose you with it or not, but that it's a trait that all of us in the general population we vary on to some degree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've really been one of its biggest. What's the word? I'm a fan of vulnerable narcissism research
and seeing it on a spectrum rather than a either or.
Sure, and it's also a dynamic mindset that we all can go in and out of throughout the course of our day. Well, a lot of people think about narcissism when I say the word narcissism. They think of Trump, right? Or they think of the sort of chest thumping, I'm the greatest, I'm the best. Or you think DJ Khaled.
Yes.
We're the best. But
all no I do is win.
Exactly. No offense to DJ Khaled. I'm big fan of DJ Khaled, but that song is an example of this. But I think that people aren't aware that there's a quieter form of narcissism that researchers have been studying, where you don't feel entitled to special privileges because you think you're the best and winning. Far from it. You think you're entitled to special privileges because you've suffered. Or maybe you are fragile, you're the most fragile person on the planet, so you deserve special privileges. So it's a different type of entitlement. The entitlement is the thing that that is core to all forms of narcissism. But there are actually different types of narcissism. There's also communal narcissism, which I talk about in my book a little bit, where you think you're entitled to special things because you're the best at helping others. And that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. After all I've done for you, like scaled up to society at large. After all I've done for the world.
Right.
You know what I mean, Nick?
Yeah, I do. And that the world owes you something back for all the good that you've perceived yourself to have done.
I'm the best at helping people. Yeah, I'm the best. Yeah.
Well, and I think anytime you start to think that the world owes you anything, you're getting off track.
Good point. Really good point, Nick. Really good point.
Well, Dr. Kaufman, I know we need to get you out of here by noon East Coast time, which is steadily approaching here. It has been such an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Aww.
And you're so funny and easy to talk to, even though this is the first time. And I only have people on where I enjoy their book, their work, but I got to tell you, I mean, I haven't been this excited about a book since Seth Godin came on. And if you know me, that's a massive compliment, because he's one of my
great
favorite authors. And I really think you've written a book that we can never control if the book sells 50,000 copies or 5 million copies, but I think it is worthy of being picked up by the zeitgeist. And that's all you can control, right? I think you've written a book that matches the time that we're in, and there's a lot of people that could really benefit from reading this book. And even if you don't see yourself as suffering from a victim mindset, we all know people that are dealing with this, and this will give those people tools and language to better understand our fellow human beings, and we can all help each other along our various paths.
I love it. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm honored that you were this excited. I saw your Instagram post about it. Feel free to censor my cuss words, but it was a real delight to chat with you. And yeah, thanks so much for the support.
And before you go, where can people find you online and all of that good stuff if they want to learn more about you?
I'll give you my OnlyFans account. No, I'm joking. We won't give that information. But no, I'm kidding. Don't have an OnlyFans. But scottbarrykaufman.com. Okay, you can go to scottbarrykaufman.com, and on there, I have access to my the Psychology podcast. Also, the Center for Human Potential. I offer trainings and teachings for the general public as well as coaches. I'm really interested in. I created a form of coaching called self-actualization coaching, and we've been training coaches on how to take their coaching to the next level. Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Awesome. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, and have an excellent day, Dr. Kaufman. Okay, everybody. Until next time, ask questions. Don't accept the status quo, and be curious.